For WHUR Digital, I'm Jenae Addison. Schools across the nation are back in session, and with the return of kids in classrooms comes a renewed focus on crucial education issues, from addressing educator shortages to ensuring school safety. Here to answer all of our burning questions is Becky Pringle, president of the National Education Association.
It's good to be with you, Jenae.
Schools are back in session. So how are you ensuring that students receive the necessary one-on-one support they need to thrive academically, especially in a post-pandemic learning environment?
I taught middle level learners the wonders of science for over 30 years. And can I just say that every year still, this time of year, even for me, and I'm not in classroom right now, but it is just such a time full of excitement and hope and possibilities. And I'm visiting schools throughout the country, meeting with reading to little children, which is not what I did, but it's just so much fun. Um, Greeting educators, from our teachers to school secretaries, with this bright light in their eyes. Full of all of that anticipation. It's just a wonderful time of year, because we all start believing that every one of our students is going to get what they need and deserve to be successful. We start believing that those people in positions of power who've been elected or appointed are going to make sure we have those resources. We start believing that we're going to work in a kind of collaborative environment, that we can build those safe, inclusive, diverse, challenging learning environments for every one of our students. And so we start every year that way for sure.
That's
And then we're faced with the reality of things like educator shortages, or lack of resources for our kids. And we here at the National Education Association and our 3 million members are, of course, lifting up our voices to make sure our kids get they need and what they deserve.
And when speaking about the educator shortage, obviously that's become a pressing concern. What strategies or initiatives can be implemented to attract and retain talented educators when thinking about the current school years and school years to come?
The educator shortage is actually chronic. It's not new. We've been following trends over the last couple of decades of the students in college, that on decline. Those who are choosing to go into education, of course, our new educators leaving at higher rates, particularly our teachers of color. And as we talk about solutions, it's important for us to listen to educators, and to have them tell us why are they thinking about or are actually leaving the profession. And what they say to us is that what actually that they said to me is just one word: respect. And I said, so what does that mean for you? And for them, that means they need to earn a professional pay, which we never have. We've always had a gap in professional pay compared to other professions. But they don't stop there with the pay. They talk about their professional right to have the authority and collaborative autonomy to make teaching and learning decisions for their students, the freedom to teach, and the freedom for our students to learn in this moment in this country is something that's weighing very, very heavily on them. And then, of course, making sure they have the resources so that when we say every student, we actually mean every student. So when we think about solutions, it's got to be about resources to pay teachers and our support staff, in a way that reflects the important role they play in this society. It's about the respect of them as the professionals they are, and it's about the resources they need so they can provide our students with the one-on-one attention they need so that their students can be successful.
And are there any specific programs or implementations that you guys are doing in order to bridge that gap?
Yes, we have partnered with the Department of Education and the Biden-Harris administration to increase funding for a solution that actually takes into account all of the things that educators have said to us about the reasons they are or considering leaving, and that is community schools. And the reason community schools are working, and we have evidence of that, is because they make they make the school the hub of the community, and they focus not only on the students themselves, but their entire families. And they see their communities as the assets they are, and bring to bear the kind of resources our students need so that they can come to school ready to learn every day. We're treating them as the whole humans they are and providing anything from dental care to mental health services to supporting them in growing gardens so they can have fresh fruit and vegetables. And everyone in the community is taking this shared responsibility for every student being successful.
And when we talk about student success, how are parents and teachers and policy makers working together to ensure equitable access to quality education for all students, regardless of their background or zip code?
Oh, Jenae, I really like the way you frame that because that's exactly what it is. There's a lot of talk from pundits and some politicians that could not be further from the truth in terms of the partnership between parents and teachers. I'm a parent, I'm a grandparent now. But as a teacher, my parents were my natural allies. I mean, they're our kids' first teachers. And so we've always worked collaboratively with them. And by the way, parents throughout this country want the same thing for their kids. They want challenging, inclusive, diverse curriculum. They want caring, qualified, certified teachers. They want support staff who help their nurture and guide their students. And so we are working in a collaborative way and making sure that elected leaders are doing what they need to do to provide the kind of support through resources throughout the system of public education, the kind of resources that we need for our educators to do the jobs they love and for students to come to school ready to learn every day.
And I want to touch back on something you said earlier about when we're talking about the educator shortage, you're seeing that a lot of the teachers that are leaving are teachers of color. And when we're talking about a diverse classroom and students, being able to see someone that looks like them and getting them excited when it comes to education, how are you making sure that the classroom is diverse?
At the NEA, we are not only partnering with the White House and the Department of Education, which has centered this work, and not just the recruitment of teachers writ large, but specifically focused on recruiting and retaining, which is so important. You can't leave that out because even when we are all the work we've done to recruit teachers of color, particularly Black teachers, they are leaving at a disproportionate rate. So the retention of our teachers of color is extraordinarily important. And what we've learned is building community among them, making them feel as though they belong in that community, making sure the school has resources. Because I will tell you, I as a Black teacher, I went back to my community. That's where I wanted to teach. And in that community, we had those inequities in education funding where I didn't have all the resources I needed for my students. So that necessarily meant there were wider gaps that I, as an educator, had to step into, and that should not be. That should not be for any of our students. And so, as we think about the solutions for a diverse workforce, we've got to make sure that we address those any kind of barriers for students of color going into teaching. So, for example, they are more likely to carry high levels of student debt, which is why we're working closely with the Department of Education on the loan forgiveness programs, because that impacts students and teachers of color at a disproportionate rate. And in addition to that, making sure that they have the supports they need to stay in the profession. And so in addition to doing that work, we're partnering with HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, with minority serving institutions, so we can find those wonderful, brilliant students who we know, with a little more encouragement, will want to become teachers.
Awesome, awesome. And I want to shift gears back to the students in particular. So when we're talking about inequities, what are some key priorities for addressing the learning gaps and challenges that have emerged as a result of the pandemic?
They have emerged since the result of the pandemic, but those gaps existed. We know that. Those gaps based on race, based on social economic status, based on disability, ability, Though they have existed. The pandemic made it worse because the pandemic made everything worse, and those gaps grew. And so what we have been focused on at the NEA is collaborating with other education stakeholders, with civil rights organizations, with communities and parents to close those gaps. And one of the initiatives that there's a lot of promise in is what we are calling accelerated learning. And what we're doing with that program is bringing in teams. So we have teachers and paraprofessionals, we have parents, we have administrators, we have elected leaders coming in as teams and working on how you can use what we now know around the science of learning, and how academic learning is connected to social and emotional learning, in a way that we can provide them with the resources, our teachers and support staff with the resources and training they need to accelerate the learning of students, to close those gaps more quickly. And I will let you know that we have already started out with a lot of success, not only in measuring, because we believe in multiple measures, not only measuring obviously through tests, but things like attendance. Students can't learn if they're not there. And we're already seeing those kinds of gaps close because we are partnering and collaborating together to accelerate the learning of our students.
Obviously, when we're talking about educational issues at large, among those concerns is school safety. So how are you effectively addressing the issue of gun violence to create safer learning environments for both students and educators?
We fought really hard for the passage of the first comprehensive gun legislation that passed Congress in 30 years. In 30 years, after all of the shootings, from Columbine to Sandy Hook to Uvalde and beyond. And by the way, it's not just gun violence in our schools, particularly in our communities of colors. It's gun violence in our communities too. And so we always talk about gun violence in that way because even if it's not in the school, it's impacting our students. And that means they do not feel safe. That means they cannot learn. And so as we continue that fight to pass more common sense gun uh, gun reform, which we know we need in this country. No one needs an assault rifle. That we don't need that. We don't need weapons of war in our communities or in our classrooms. So we'll continue that fight, and we also have to address as a nation that sense of loneliness and lack of connectedness and the increase in the mental health challenges that our students and their families and our communities are facing in this moment. And so we know we have to address this from that holistic place, and we will continue that advocacy to do everything we can to make our schools safe, to make our community safe, to make our students and educators feel safe as they come to school and they learn, and educators are at the schools greeting our students to help them learn.
Well said. Well, I don't want to keep you. I know you have a busy schedule ahead of you, but Becky, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
For WHUR Digital, I'm Jenae Addison.